Okay, final subtopic of our final topic, propaganda. So, key questions. Number 1, what is propaganda and why does Augustus use it? Number 2, what language and titles does Augustus use and why? How does he portray himself visually and why? And number 4, how was literature used to promote Augustus's reign? So, what is propaganda? It is a means of communication to influence the views of others towards something. So you could present information in a certain way, you could leave out or omit information, and you can appeal to emotions rather than rationality. So we'll start off by looking at the language and titles which Augustus used. So he rose to power through force, as did Caesar, but he wanted to avoid his fate, and so he had to appear to have been given his powers legally through the Senate. So he needed to appear as their representative and avoid the title of king or dictator. So the titles and powers held by Augustus all used very republican language. So the princeps senatus was the head of the Senate, tribunicia potestas, the power of a tribune of the plebs, proconsulare imperium, you'll remember, was the power of a proconsul, and Pontifex Maximus was a chief priest. So all of these positions and powers existed. Augustus just sort of added to them. And this pater patriae was an honorary title, so father of the fatherland. This was all republican, this was nothing new, and we're not using the word king or dictator. In terms of his visual presentation, Augustus portrays himself in different ways depending on what he wants to emphasize. But he's consistently portrayed as strong and youthful, and quite often divine as well. As we'll see, this is at odds with his actual physical appearance. He doesn't quite look in the pictures how he is said to look in the literature, and also artistic trends at the time tended to portray things as more realistic, whereas in these examples we see Augustus is portrayed in quite an idealistic way. So here we have a statue called the PRIMA PORTA Augustus. So this is a military figure. The pose is called ad locutio, which is the term used when a general is speaking to his troops. And Augustus here is barefooted like a god, so it shows that he is divine. Here we have a statue of Augustus as Pontifex Maximus. You'll remember that is the head priest of Rome. And so in this he's sort of appealing to the mos maiorum. And with his toga covering his head, that is a traditional or sort of modest religious way of appearing, and it shows his pietas or devotion to duty. Another one we have here is Augustus as DIVI FILIUS, or son of a god, and this is back when he was still Octavian, so showing he was a son of a god. So on the one hand, or the one side on the left, we've got him wearing a laurel wreath, which demonstrates his political ambitions. And on the other side, we've got a comet, which refers to Julius Caesar's deification, so it's showing that link between them. The last form of propaganda I want to look at is literature. So writers flourished under Augustus, and literature in his time generally emphasized peace, security, and a return to tradition. So the Aeneid, which we're going to study in far more detail next term, is an epic poem written by Virgil, which glorifies the achievements of Rome and Augustus. Horace, a poet associated with Augustus's close friend Maecenas, wrote a number of poems, including a hymn which commemorated the secular games. And these games, remember, were to celebrate Augustus's victories and symbolize the beginning of a new golden age. And finally, the Res Gestae, written by Augustus himself, is the ultimate form of Augustan literary propaganda. So it listed his achievements, and it was placed as an inscription around the empire, and he portrays himself in the best light, emphasizing his successes and leaving out undesirable information, such as the prescriptions. Okay, so key questions. Do you have the answers to these? So what is propaganda and why Augustus uses it? The language and titles he uses, how he portrays himself visually, and how literature is used. So make a note or make some notes for all of these questions, bring your problems to class, and we'll discuss them there. See you then.